All right, welcome back to the Dental Domination Podcast. My name is Dan Bryan. I am the co-founder of Dental Store, an online marketing agency for dental practices, but I'm not here to talk about our company or sell anything today. I'm interested in having what I anticipate will be a really eye-opening conversation with a friend of mine, Dan Johnson. He is the founder and CEO of Peak Performance VA, and we're going to get into all sorts of things today, talking exactly what VAs are, what they can do for your dental practice, why you might want to consider them. And we're also going to dive deep into some pretty cool, pretty out there technological advances that Dan has implemented into the business and into his service providings or his company's service providings for dental practices. So I'm so excited to have you here today, Dan. Thank you so much for joining me today. What can you share with listeners about sort of your background and how you actually came to not only found Peak Performance VA, but what brought you into the dental industry and what got you involved in marketing and all of that?
So thanks, Dan. Great name, by the way. Dan and
I
Dan.
like it. Yeah.
So
good.
It's like me and my brother. We're Johnson and Johnson. So,
Okay.
but we're not the big company, obviously. But I kind of my background's a little bit different. My brothers and my dad's a veterinarian. My brothers, all of them except for one, are in the medical field, either general practicing doctors, orthodontists, dentists. And I went the business route. I had the opportunity at 18 to be a co-owner in a Kentucky Fried Chicken. Just one a little punk kid, played basketball. Nobody would hire me. This local guy at the local KFC hired me, and we just struck a good relationship. I was a sports guy. He was a sports guy. And then at 18, I got offered a part ownership.
Amazing.
And so I did the KFC, the fast food route, for about 15 years. I ended up having 7 KFCs. But during that process, my little brother Ben was going to Ohio State for dental school, and he just had.
I'm a Michigan man.
Yeah,
you can't say that here.
You
can't say that here.
Yeah. The
It's all right.
side story: my other brother Joel went to Michigan. So my brother's orthodontist. He went to Michigan.
Okay, so, well, that's a damn good dental school.
Yeah. So I mean, they're both good, right? So me, I'm actually a Georgia Bulldog fan. So
okay,
but he just had asked me, would you ever help me open and run some dental practices? And because as we know, a lot of dentists will go to school, but they don't make them take business classes. It's not a requirement. And most of them come out as businessmen, businesswomen, and so it's always kind of befuddled me of why they don't require it, because there's lots of mistakes that happen throughout from beginning. And part of that is because the dentists, oral surgeons, they make good money. And so the losing a little bit here and there doesn't seem like a big deal. So anyways, my brother was smart enough to say, hey, would you come help me? But it was kind of a little toss up for me, because you go from having a franchise system with KFC, which is great, but the money's good, to saying, hey, I'm going to jump ship. And a small little practice originally was going to be in Idaho, ended up being in Waco, Texas, is where he ended up being. But as me and my wife talked about it, with the fast food industry, you go to work in the morning early, and then you don't get off till late. It's not for the faint of heart, and your margins are 5 to 12%. And your employees are hard to deal with. I mean, all industries, employees are hard to deal with.
I was going to say, we're talking dental here, so staffing is.
Yeah, I can run a business with my eyes closed. It's the people that make our business hard.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I ended up talking to my wife, and we realized, like, listen, my kids were young. I never saw them. When I went to work, they were gone. They were asleep. When I got home, they're in bed. And we just said, listen, if I die tomorrow, I don't take my money. I don't take anything with me, right? And so we wanted to make sure we had a life where I could look back and say, I had spent my time with my kids. I had options to spend time with my kids. So we sold. I sold all my kids. Part of the deal when you buy into this franchise system, if you're out, you're out. You can't just keep and walk away and do other things. You have to be in control, running. Yeah.
Got it.
So when I left, I sold them. I actually took about 8 months off.
I thought you were going to say you took the secret recipe.
Yeah, I wish. It's not really a secret anymore now with everything. I mean, people can figure it out. But it was one of those decisions that, as me and my wife decided, that dental is great. Monday through Friday, and
lifestyle,
then 8 to 5. And so for me, it was a great option. Then I was working with my brother, and some people are like, "Oh, I can't. Families don't work." For me, it actually worked very, very well, because me and my brother are opposites. I am a more combative. My personality is I don't mind conflict.
Hmm.
And my brother doesn't like conflict. He likes to have fun, and I like to have fun. Same thing, but he likes to have fun. He wants just to make sure everything's smooth, and so it
Yeah.
worked well. I walked in with a business background and an idea of how to grow things. He is a great clinician and had broad plans. We were both kind of what we say is when we looked at the business, we both kind of looked at the forest, but he could never see a path through the forest.
Got it.
So I came in saying, okay, here's our path. We need marketing. We need to make sure our team's right. We need more doctors. If we're going to grow, what's our plan? And so I got into the marketing side of it. No marketing background other than a business perspective and kind of a unique eye and a willingness to learn. And so I came in and did something different. We changed our marketing strategy. We were a small little office in Waco, Texas, 4 ops, 1 doctor, 2 hygienists. And I came in and just said, okay, we're going to switch this completely up. I don't want to do traditional marketing with a face family. And so I take this from the Kentucky Fried Chicken days. The Chick-fil-A was the best marketing campaign with the cows, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't like chicken. It is so stupid, but it is so brilliant. So I just said, okay, how do I do something? So we did a white banana that said we don't like yellow, and on a dental bit, and we put it everywhere in Waco, everywhere. Yeah. And it was so different that people just started getting noticing us.
Yeah.
And because
that's bananas.
Yeah, bananas, and it was just dumb. And I think with marketing, it's about capturing attention, right? Marketing is getting somebody, it's emotions, it's getting somebody to kind of look and go, what was that?
Yeah, well, in today's day and age, it's all about stopping the scroll. That's all that matters.
And so that's kind of how that thing. We built that one practice up to now it's 17 ops. I'm actually in the practice. My office is actually in my brother's practice.
Cool.
And so I deal with the day-to-day stuff. I help manage the call center team here as well, and then I oversee our marketing. We ended up building it to 4 practices, and through that process, you have a marketing company. I created a marketing company in about 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it just to help some friends out. And that was mainly because we were being successful. We were seeing about 100 new patients a month at this point in our main office.
That's great.
And it was just through part of it was marketing, but it also was training our team to answer the phones. And I think that's a key in the marketing where these offices.
Oh man, preach.
Yeah. Oh, and you know that. Anybody in markets knows when I had my company, the biggest complaint I always got is marketing's not working. And I'd show them the proof and the data, and they would be like, well, we're just not getting the calls. And so we use call tracking numbers. No, you're getting the calls. Now let's listen to some calls. And most of the time, not all, it was the team. The team was bungling it. And I tell people when I talk to offices is you need to train your team. Part of marketing and having a good team is train them how to answer the phones. Because I could hire my son that's 9 years old to answer the phones, but he's not going to be effective. He could answer them, but he's not going to be effective. And so the accountability had to be thrown back on. And so through that process, I learned, okay, we may have to make sure our team is trained. Our team knows how to answer the phones. Their whole job is to answer the phone. To answer the phone correctly and getting those patients from the phone to the schedule. That's it.
Yep.
All that stuff doesn't matter. And then when they come in, you have the atmosphere and you have the clinical team does their job, right?
Yeah.
And so through that process, I built that marketing company and then I sold it to, it got to the point where I found out I'm an entrepreneur at Spirit. I like to build and start, but then I like to offload and let other companies handle it, but then I keep a piece. So all the companies I've built and sold, I've kept, other than the KFC because it was in my contract. I keep a piece of it. So through this process, what happened is when I started my virtual assistant company, which we're talking about today, is I about a year and a half ago, we've probably over the 12 years I've been with my brother, we've probably gone over 50 plus front desk employees for our 4 practices.
Yeah, and I think, obviously not at that same scale because you're a larger practice now, but I think anyone listening to this podcast that's a dentist owner can probably relate to that. Well, I would argue it's one of the hardest positions to hire for and also retain.
But it's the most critical. One thing I tell doctors too is remember, if your front desk team aren't answering the phone and they're not doing it, you're going to have to do it. And then you're wasting time and money because you went to school to be a doctor, not to answer phones. Yeah. But we forget about the front desk. They're our lowest paid employees usually. They're the ones that are forgot about, but they deal with a lot of crap. from
Yeah.
inbound calls, people mad about money, and the if there's something wrong with treatment plans or something like that, it's usually thrown on front, right? And
Yep.
so through that process, I kept getting frustrated. We used to, kind of a unique story. I was part of a hiring team about 4 years ago for our offices, me and our business admin, and we do group interviews. So we would send out on Indeed or Facebook, and we'd get 15, 20 people to apply for a front desk position. Some had experience, some didn't. But we'd send out an email back saying, I need you here at this time. Out of those 15, 20, 10 might show up.
Yeah.
And then when we do the interview, we do it as a group right there in front of everybody. And the reason why we did that is we wanted them to see their competition. We want to see, hey, like, listen, there's other people that want this job. And then it also makes it more efficient for us, where we can kind of tell them what our culture is, what we expect. But the last one we did, 3 people got up and walked out after we told them our culture. So we had 7 people left. And I was just like, what is going on? Then we did the interviews, quick interviews, 5 minutes. And then through the process, we ended up doing the working interviews, a couple, and then we hired 2. One, they both came in, started the same day. We trained them. We spent a week. After the first week, one girl doesn't show up on Monday. Just nothing. No call, nothing, doesn't show up. So we have no idea why.
This ghosting thing, this trend drives me nuts.
Yeah. And then the second one, we trained her for a position, and part of her position was we needed her to come in at 10 o'clock and stay till 6. Our office is closed at 4 o'clock. We go 8 to 4 in our office. We did that as a team because our team wanted it, so they can get home for their kids from school. And
That's
so after we trained her and we got her hired her from 10 to 6, 3 months, and we do what's called check-ins, which is kind of our review process. We just call it check-ins just to see. Of course, in this check-in, she wanted more money, but she didn't want to do the 10 to 6 anymore. She wanted to go to 8 to 4 like everybody else. And we were super frustrated because we're like, well, that's not what we hired you for. We hired you to be our 10 to 6, answer, because we were missing a lot of after-hours calls. Like, we used call tracking, all of our phone numbers with call tracking, so we could see that we were missing calls from 4 to 6, a lot.
Yeah.
And so just miss appointments. So we told her we couldn't do that. We'd be willing to give her a little bit of raise because she was doing a good job. She quit, left. And so I was mad because I'm like, what is going on? Like, we're paying more than we should. We're talking about anywhere between $18 to $23 for a front desk employee, which in Texas, I'm sure in the metroplex areas, in higher densely populated cities like New York or in California, it's probably a lot more.
Yeah.
And so I had a buddy, I'm in a lot of groups, and I'm on an advisory council, and I was in this advisory council with 8 other dentists. And one guy in there, before this, somebody told me about virtual assistants, and I was skeptical. And so
so just to pause you there for a second, can you explain to our listeners what a VA actually is, or a virtual assistant?
So a virtual assistant is a real person, and what they do is they are based out of the USA. Ours are in Philippines. We are working with some people try to get into Mexico and Uruguay to have Spanish speaking, especially in Texas, because that's a big part. But they're real people that pretty much do admin tasks for you. They can answer the phones. They can do insurance. They can do pre-Ds. They do recall, recare. But there are real people that act as your admin for your office.
And you were skeptical of this when you first heard of it.
Because I'm like, how are these people going to know how we do our office and terminology?
Right.
Are they going to know dental terminology? But what I found out through this process is I hired one personally, just through a friend, just saying, hey, you should message this person and just see what you think.
Give it a shot. Yeah,
I did a virtual interview with this. Her name is Chin. And my skepticism was, okay, what kind of English do they speak? Is there a big accent?
Sure.
Because
depending on the region, and that, folks expect something that's going to sound familiar to them.
Yeah,
that's just the reality.
Yeah, like India, we all know an Indian accent. It's like, what is going on? Are you like, I want to speak to somebody in America. The thing we like about the Philippines is they speak
especially in Texas, man. I can imagine.
Yeah, really anywhere, but you get into rural country areas.
I get it.
They want somebody to kind of sound. They want to sound American.
I get it.
Anyways, we took a chance. I'm like, all right, we'll try it. She was amazing. We're talking about from day one. What can I do? Google Chat is how we communicated. We use CareStack in our practices, and so there's a CareStack University. first week we're like, okay, here's the university, here's the email. I just gave her a login into our PMS system.
And that for listeners is terminology and, treatment types and that sort of thing to familiarize yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And to learn how most healthcare offices have a practice management software, some way where they can communicate or their patients can schedule. You have all the treatment in there, and that's they have to know how to utilize that to do these programs.
Right. And all of that software is easily accessible remotely now.
YouTube. We found out actually all software, any practice management software, you just need to get on YouTube. There's videos left and right.
Yeah.
And so she was great. She had dental background, which was a plus. So she had the dental terminology, and that was kind of made me interested.
Yeah.
We hired her, and she was amazing. Then let's say in January,
and I bet you weren't paying $18.
No, and I'll get to the fee a little bit later, and a little bit more about.
We'll get to that.
How much we charge, or how much she charged, and how much we paid, because it was eye opening. Plus, plus to mention kind of like there's no taxes, no benefits. And that's where most business owners know when you pay an employee, they might get paid $25 an hour, but you're actually paying $32, $35 an hour, depending on what taxes and what benefits you have.
Well, and we'll get into, the fees here at the end, but we're closer to the end. But what I always think is important to keep in mind too, people first hear these figures, you're paying them what? Well, in their own countries, they're able to make a very solid living on these reduced wages, and we just have no context for that. But I think, just because you're not offering benefits or you're paying this lower amount does not mean in any way, shape, or form that this person is getting a raw deal. And I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, and
because they are a valued member of the team, like you said. You want to be doing right by them.
And they get paid very well. So in there, we're going to remember in the United States, our cost of living is skyrocketing. Like it's a lot. And to live day to day, and we expect a lot, right? Like, but in a lot of these other countries, no, they what we pay them is very, very good, and they are very grateful for the work because, like in the Philippines, unemployment rates can be 20%.
Crazy,
so people to have a job, just to have income is something they want and they need. Yeah. So kind of
if they're willing to work at 2 a.m., man.
Yep, that's another thing is our time. They're 13 hours. We're in Texas. We're Central Time. They're 13 hours ahead of us. So these VAs are working graveyard shift at night, and they're totally okay with it. You know, it is one of the things that they're like we're more willing to work at home, to work graveyard than have to try to find a job, go out in the city, transportation. Yeah. So, but the way this kind of started is I was at an advisory council meeting with I'm in a group, advisory council group with about 8 other dentists.
Yeah,
we were talking, and we were they were just mentioning staffing issues, and I said, well, I hired a VA, and of course they were like, what is that? And then through that I said, well, can you connect me? And that's when I was like, light bulb went off. One of my partners, his name is Dr. Chad Latino, one of my good friends. Me and him, we're both in the meeting. We would go outside for lunch, and I said, Chad, dude, let's look at see what we can do. And so I'm like, okay, how do we even start this? So kind of make this long story shorter.
And this was what year? This was recently, right?
This January.
Man, you are moving. You are moving.
And so, but it was just one of those needs, and it was more personal. Like we needed people for our office. Like, it wasn't this was just not just for. This was kind of started out of selfish thing because we needed them. And
that's the best way to learn, honestly.
Yeah. And so we found some people that had some connections in the Philippines where they could help us recruit. Yeah. And that's kind of how, but then we had to get everything set up. So we said, okay, let's just start from scratch. So we did a lot of testing on our own. We ended up getting a network people in the Philippines, and then it just kind of blew up. We had friends that, as I talked to people through my networking groups, I had people reach out to me and just be like, hey, like, what is this? What's going on? And does this really work? And I'm like, yes, there is training and there is a process, but these type of employees, they want to work and they will do anything. That's the crazy thing is you might hire from one thing, but once they get proficient at that, it's like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do claims?
Of course. Yeah.
Do you mind doing some predeterminations or insurance verifications all over it?
Yeah.
And so we created
and it's stability for the practice as well, because as you know, and you talked about earlier, staffing right now is awful. Just across the board awful.
Yeah. because people can go to Chick-fil-A or a fast food restaurant and make what usually a front desk team member makes. And
Yep.
so they're like, well, it's always the same thing as we've lost a lot of team. I told you we lost over 50 employees. Probably about a third of those employees has asked to come back after they left.
Mhm.
We have a rule in our office: if you quit without 2 weeks notice for a reason other than like my husband's got another job moving somewhere else,
Yeah.
my mom was sick or something where you're a family emergency, we don't hire back. Grass is not greener on the other side. We pride ourselves having a good culture at our office, which most offices I think do. We have fun, we pay well, and so. But the virtual assistants have made it where it's cost effective for us, and we're getting the work done. What we found too with employees is that admin position. If somebody's not on them all the time, our regular check-ins, there's a lot of wasted time. Work after we do a training for us, so we do a quarterly training for our front team, and we found that for the first month after training, that people do great, but then the next 2 months it goes. You see the downhill trend of them getting like, oh, well, I'll be on my phone playing games or on social media on my computer instead of actually doing the work.
Yeah.
And what we found with the virtual assistants, they go at it and it's task after task, and they're task oriented, like check off, check off, check off, check off. I mean,
yeah, I've worked, not in dental, but obviously you and I, we have marketing background, and in marketing, VAs are quite common. I've worked with many over the years, and there has not been one that I would describe as anything but a hard worker.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yep, and it's just for us. It was practical sense, and so that is how the company formed. It literally was from a need, which is how most companies are formed, and then we tested it. Like, so in our practices, we have 3 virtual assistants now. We have 3 total we have 4 practices, and it doesn't replace front. I tell people you still need a front desk team member to check in, check out,
of course,
and to have some in-office interaction. Maybe some offices are smaller, so that front desk person might be doing treatment plans.
Yeah.
We actually have one of our clinical team does treatment plans just because they understand, so they know both sides. But I know a lot of offices, their front desk team member is the treatment planner.
Very common.
And so it doesn't replace them. All it does is it takes the needless, small, tedious tasks that offices are doing that take time off plates, so that you can focus on patient-centered care in front of you. And
it's too bad you can't do a VA for hygiene.
Right. I know. Well, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah,
right?
We'll see. But speaking of, maybe with leaps in technology someday. But speaking of technology, I want to get into this AI thing, because we've talked offline, and this just blows my mind. I love what you guys are doing here, but talk a little bit about how you sort of overcome that challenge that is the issue with language and dialect and that and accents, specific to the region that your practice is in. How'd you overcome that with offshore employees?
So the cool thing about all of us have heard of AI, and it's not going away. It's been here for a while, and some of us have jumped on early.
Yeah,
it has changed.
Get on board.
Yeah, when ChatGPT came up, 2+ years ago, some of us jumped on it just to see what it was about.
I feel like I've gained an extra 10 hours in my workday. Every day.
It's anybody's dream if you're willing to have something look over or do some work. All my legal documents now, I throw through an AI program and be like, I need these points pulled out. Yep. So AI is not going anywhere. It's going to be the future. Yep. It's not going to replace. I hear people, it's going to replace humans. No, it's not. It's the same thing in working in factories.
It's going to make us more efficient.
Yep. Machines in factories didn't replace humans. Yes, it replaced some, but you still need people to run those machines, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm a believer it's actually going to create more jobs on the long term.
Yeah.
Because it's going to help us grow. It's going to be the next tech. So through that, I realized I have a nephew that's a gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And when he plays his games, he was joking like, I can sound like anybody I want. I can sound like a girl. I can sound like any character. And I was like, that was another thing kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, wait a second, you can? And he's like, yeah, I can. And so I thought, well, if they can do it gaming wise, why couldn't we do that with our virtual assistants where they're from the Philippines? There has to be a software where we can download or do something where our AIs can sound like who they want. And so we're working on a program right now with a company to have our virtual assistants use an AI tool on their computers. They're still
Mhm.
talking live. It'd be like me and you talking here. The tricky part is trying to get it so it's not a delay. So it's not
Yeah.
a 2 second delay. It's one like live voiceover, voice on voice.
Yeah.
And where if we have a client in Alabama or Texas, where in the country where they have a southern accent, where
Mhm.
our VAs can sound like they're from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or they're
Yeah.
from Boston, Massachusetts, or they're from South Dakota, or
Well,
they're
I'm from Michigan, so you'd need to make my VA sound pretty obnoxious.
yeah, or Minnesota, or I say
Well, I was actually born in Minnesota, so I've got the best of both worlds.
okay, so
Yeah.
or Washington,
Oh yeah.
So that's what's kind of changing it because then your patients have no idea
Yeah,
that
it's
when you're
amazing.
talking to somebody, they're actually from the Philippines or wherever
Yeah.
they're from. They can sound like they're Amy or Joy or whoever from right down the street.
It's mind-blowing stuff. So what do you have the lag time down to now? Because I would imagine that's only going to improve as technology.
It's about 1.5 seconds, and
You know,
so
that's not bad, and it's going to get better.
it's gonna be real time. That's the
Yeah.
goal, to get real time. Right now, where the struggle is actually is making sure the equipment, the sound of like the RBA's head equipment is good, because what the voiceover and the voice does is it changes a little bit, and if you
Okay.
don't have the right equipment,
Yeah.
that with the right quality, it distorts it a little bit. And
Yeah.
so this is something that's not going away, but it's something that I don't know of any other company that's doing this. And so saying the lights turn on off in my
That's all right.
office. It is, so it's a little groundbreaking.
It is, yeah.
But for me, it's just, it makes sense, right? Like,
It's amazing.
and initially we thought, I've had a couple of people I've done some interviews and talked to about them, like, well, what do the VAs think? Does that make them feel like you're taking away their voice? And I'm like, no. Like, if I was working in China,
Well, if I was a VA in the United States working for someone in the Philippines, I would think they would do the same thing to me in reverse, and that makes sense.
yeah, or China. Like, if I'm a businessman, and I have a business in China or work with someone in China, and I used a voiceover app to translate, it's the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
It's
Like, they're not
amazing.
hearing my voice; they're hearing the Chinese version.
Yeah.
And
So are you piloting this actively, the AI component with certain practices right now?
Yeah, we're piloting it mainly with our own, because we
Okay.
got to make sure before we roll this out. This is something that it's going to be fully rolled out by the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
by 2025. Because there are some things in there we have to make sure. Because remember, with me having my own practice and Chad has a practice, and then my brother Joel's an orthodontist, so we have pilot programs because we want to make sure that if we roll this to somebody, they're not having issues.
Yeah, of course.
Because then all of a sudden, they guess who they're calling? They're calling
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And they're saying, Dan, why is this being all funky? And what's going on here? And what's this? And
You
so,
just change your voice and pretend to not be in the office.
yeah, right. I mean, I can just throw an AI tool,
Yeah.
right? But so it is something that's rolling out. But the whole point of this is having a virtual assistant in your office that actually helps you grow.
Amazing.
Like I said, it takes tasks where somebody's on the phone with insurance for an hour.
Yeah.
You don't have to have. You can have your virtual assistant do this. Like,
Yep.
your team doesn't have to get boggled down by doing those claims. Like I said,
Yeah.
predeterminations, insurance
Yep.
verification. Even we're having one of
The
our
really
teams-
tedious, time-consuming stuff that's ultimately, not worth, the 18 or $20 an hour, quite honestly, when you think about efficiency.
like
it's just
repair
not.
recall.
Yeah.
How are you gonna have your team sit on the phone for 4 hours calling patients
Yeah.
to try to get them to schedule? No, like
Yeah.
you can want them to do it, but they're gonna hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, because they see everybody else in the office walking around, talking, going to the break room, and
Yeah.
so
So we've talked about all these tedious tasks and being able to offload that is invaluable. Can you just recap real quickly before we close out here? Because I want to get a sense of what this costs, what it looks like to work with you guys. I want you to be able to tell folks how to connect with you if they're interested. But what specifically, just broadly, what are the tasks that you're able to offload to these VAs through your services? So we've already talked about, call handling, front desk, insurance verification. What else, though, am I missing?
any admin. So any
Okay.
admin, we do this for all healthcare. So this is not just dentistry. We actually have healthcare because I mentioned my brothers are doctors. I have two other brothers
Yeah.
that are doctors, but it's any admin task. So we some of them can be personal assistants, like personal secretaries for the doctors. But that's mainly for DSOs or multiple practice or multiple offices, because I mean, a dentist is not crazy busy.
Yeah.
And they usually have one of their assistants handle most of the admin stuff, like personal. But really, it's like I said, predetermination. So if you need to get a pre-D for somebody, you can do insurance verification, insurance negotiations. Like they can
Hmm.
reach out and negotiate on your behalf for insurances. So because we know insurance, especially for offices where people struggle because you get placed under an umbrella and it goes down and down. It can be Medicare claims. So if you're a Medicare office, right?
Yeah.
It can be collecting payments. It can be insurance verifications,
Yeah.
recall, recare.
Anything.
Pretty much anything your admin does, these VAs do, and all our VAs have dental background.
What's the most unique use case that you've got with a client right now?
I would say probably a personal secretary,
Okay. Yeah.
where they handle and they handle like emails,
Yeah.
deal with sales reps, things
Yeah.
like that. But it's and that dentist has 15 locations, and so
Yeah.
he's pretty busy, and
It's a
so
lot.
gets a lot of emails and a lot of spam. And the VA kind of handles his personal side of it,
Yeah.
schedules
Kind of a gatekeeper.
schedules dinner reservations for his family,
There you go.
haircuts, all that stuff. So
Like
it's
a
kind of
concierge service.
Yep, pretty much. And
Yeah.
but our most valuable is our time, right? And
Yeah,
he's the point where he's
absolutely.
like, listen, if I can afford somebody doing this for me, so I can focus my time on what I'm doing, which is growing this business,
Yeah.
it's all. But other than that,
Amazing.
and so
So what does it look like to work with you all from a cost standpoint?
so ours is a flat fee of $19.95. So it comes about $12 an hour is what
Okay.
the cost is. These VAs work 40 hours a week. They can work Monday through Saturday because we
Yep.
have some offices that do Saturday. They can work your whatever hours. Some offices it can be 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning to 4. It can be 8 to 5. It can be 9 to 6. It really depends on what your office needs. They're very
And what do you think as far as, the average amount of time that one of your clients puts into managing or actively supervising this particular type of employee?
The first week it's probably about 10 hours. After
Okay.
that, it's probably about 5 minutes a day.
And does your company interface at all with the VA from the point of hire, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so the point of hire, we're part of the hiring process, and then we have a manager that manages the team
Oh,
of
okay.
VAs just to make sure that they're on task and see if there's anything on their end. And then they
Yeah.
also will communicate with the offices to make sure anything on their end. But we found most offices, they just assign somebody in their office to kind
Yeah.
of keep tabs or just stay in front. And it's through Google Chat. We just use Google Chat. Super, super easy to stay communicated with the VAs.
Yeah.
And then we also ask our offices to include the VAs in their monthly team meetings. If they're
Yeah.
doing,
That's
they
great.
should be doing. I hope they're doing it.
Yeah.
To be a successful office, I'm hoping you're doing team meetings just
I
so
think
they.
it's critical for culture to involve them too in some way, shape, or form.
And then the last thing we tell our offices, so it's $19.95 a month flat fee, paid semi-monthly. So these are contracted employees. There's no if you don't want them after a month or you don't need them, if there's no big deal. There's no right to hire, right? I mean, it's kind of right to hire, right to fire their contracts.
Yep.
And so we don't. Our contract is just a 2-week contract. You just have to be every 2 weeks. That's when we take the payment. And then they can do any task that you want or need for your office, and it's pretty seamless. We'll send you resumes. We'll send you 3 or 4 resumes of candidates. You pick ones you want, and then we'll set up a virtual interview where
Cool.
me or the manager of them will moderate and let you ask questions to the VA, and then
Yeah.
you get to pick and choose. And then the setup is pretty much they have to be able to get access to your practice management software, which is super, super simple these days, especially with an open system. Most
Yeah.
offices will have open. Sometimes we have offices have to have a separate computer in their office where they can log on. These VAs can log on. It just has to
Yeah.
sit in a corner somewhere. So sometimes there is something they have to get, but most offices have extra computers. Like the
Yeah.
doctor's logging in somewhere, somebody's logging in somewhere when they're off work. And then they have to make sure they have some type of VoIP system for their phones,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
most offices do now. Most of them are not plugging
Yeah.
their line in. So,
Yeah.
and that's it. That is pretty much it. And then once they learn their system, the best thing is the dental terminology. They already know about dentistry. So you're not
Amazing.
teaching about root canals and crowns, and they have, a lot of them have insurance background, so they already know how to deal with insurances. Most of them work for Cigna or Delta or Aetna, and so they understand the process. And so it's pretty seamless. They know how to get around things that we just don't know who to talk to, how to get around things, which makes them valuable.
Well, y'all are doing amazing things, and I'm really excited about it. I think this is, the next generation, the future of this in dentistry and healthcare in general. So I applaud what you're doing, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight and explaining how this process works. If folks want to connect with you and are interested in getting started with a VA for their practice, what's the first step? Where should they go?
I think the first thing to do is check out what we do. I think it's important for you to kind of get some knowledge about what a virtual assistant is, what they can do. So go to our website, it's peakperformanceva.com. But if you really want to have a conversation, so a lot of my conversations is a little bit about virtual assistants, but it's a lot about how we've grown our practices when I talk to doctors. And so just send me a text or calls. I'm in meetings all the time. So if you call me and leave me a voicemail, I'll call you back. But the best way to text me is that my number is 254-527-5981. Okay. Or my email at djohnson@peakperformanceva.com. And I'll respond to you. But it's unfortunately, it's the way we're going because it's just a way to combat having employees do the jobs that we need done for us to be successful. So
I'll add all that info in the show notes and folks can connect with you if they like. Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate you coming on today. And if I have my way about it, I'd love to have you back on in the future. And especially as you continue to integrate AI into your product offerings, I just think it's amazing what you all are doing.
Stuff.
So, man. Yeah,
and
man.
You got a cool name. Like, how do you beat that? Dan and
right.
Dan.
Yeah, come on. Just come on anytime and I'll feel better about myself. Yeah, I love that. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Dan. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, anyone listening out there, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or YouTube now, I guess, or Spotify, wherever you listen to your shows. We'd really appreciate it. It is the best single way possible for us to reach other dentists and help other practices out. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Dan. And take care. We'll talk soon. Yep. See ya.